I'm here in Boise, Idaho with Russell Brunson, the one and only, and we are gonna go fly all around Idaho. I'm gonna go put him to the test behind the wheel of the TBM 850 to see if he can hang. We're gonna have some fun. We're gonna give you guys a ton of information about his life, his business, and how he's grown and scaled an amazing company. Russell, what do you think? You excited?
I'm nervous, excited, all the things. If we survive this, it's gonna be amazing.
Yes, and so stick around and see if we survive.
All right, you're gonna take off. What I want you to do, you gotta use your feet to maintain center line, and I'll show you where to hold the stick. I'll control the power, but you control everything else. All right, and I'll talk through, but about 90 knots, 85, 90 knots, I'm gonna say pull back on the stick, and you're gonna pull back and just gracefully lift the plane up. So feet, down on the bottom, so off the brakes, good. Just hold it right there, hold it right there. I'm gonna run the power out. You're working the heading with your pedals, so a little bit of right pedal there, that's nice. There's 60 knots, 100% torque, looking good. We're just holding this for, just put a little bit of left pedal in there. There you go. There's 85, there's 90. Pull back, pull back, pull back, pull back, pull back. Pull back, hold it right there, hold it right there. A little bit more forward, a little bit forward, a little bit forward. So, yeah, like that. So you push it forward a little bit. I'll trim it a little bit for you. Turn a little right, we want to kind of come up. Gear's coming up.
What in the world?
And there you go, hold it right there. So like get that picture in your head and kind of hold it right there. Flaps are coming up. And we are a left turn to 010. Alright, who are you and what are you doing in my airplane?
My name is Russell Brunson, and right now I am flying your airplane, so...
That's right, here, you can fly. You have controls. Let's see if you can fly and talk at the same time. First question I have for you is, what do you do and what has been the journey for you to get there up to this point?
The version that is the easiest is that I serve entrepreneurs through a lot of ways. So I write books. I've written 3 books, working on book number 4. We built a software company called ClickFunnels, helps entrepreneurs. We do events for entrepreneurs. So
serve entrepreneurs. Okay. Has it always been that way? Like, have you always been building software companies and doing those kind of things?
Kind of, not initially entrepreneurs, but like I started when I was in college. I went to Boise State, which we just flew over, and I was a wrestler there. So I'd go to wrestling practice every day. Then I met my wife. We got married, and then I tried to start a business online. So initially it was just doing that. I tried selling hosting. I tried buying stuff at thrift stores and selling on eBay. I was doing all sorts of stuff. And then eventually I started creating products and selling them through what is now called a funnel. Back then we didn't have a name for them. My first info product was a DVD teaching people how to make potato guns.
Last year I came to work with my spud gun in a duffel bag. Can you imagine if I was deranged?
And so that's kind of how it started. And I was just selling info products on different markets, different niches, things I could either create myself, like the DVD on how to make potato guns. Or I would find people like Howard Berg, the world's fastest reader, and we'd take his product and we'd publish it and sell it. And after a couple of years of that, people started asking me what I was doing. And so I remember one day I put on a little event, shirt and tie on, and started teaching internet marketing, and I really had fun doing that. And that kind of started the entrepreneur of like serving these people. And I wasn't good at it then, but I was like a year ahead of everybody else. And so I would just teach what I would learn. And last year, people were freaking out. They would try to do it, and that's been the last, 17, 18 years of my life now.
You mentioned that a funnel did not exist back then. Did you invent the funnel?
I don't think I invented the funnel, but I was definitely with the handful of people as we were all kind of innovating it. I remember the very first person that I saw do a funnel, or like what I would call a funnel, was a guy named Mike Chen, and he had a free site you could go sign up for. And a lot of people had free sites back in the day to build lists. And he did something where you sign up for his free site, and then the next page he had a thing where there's a special offer. In fact, that's where the term one-time offer came from, because his headline was like, hey, I have a special one-time offer where you can get, $500 of my products for $97. And I remember he did that, and it was like, at the time, no one had ever seen what's now called an OTO. No one had ever seen one before. And he was getting like 50-60% of people to take that off a free sign up to that. And so he started telling everybody, and then we're like, what? So we started adding that to our sites, and sure enough, it worked. A couple of years later, people started adding more things to upsells and downsells. And I remember Mike Philsame and Onyx and Gall had a product called Launch Tree. It was the first people ever talking about upsell, downsell flows. And so we were all just testing things and trying stuff. I was on that course showing like the 3 or 4 different things that we had kind of discovered, one of which was the order form bump. That was something, I'll take credit for that one. Because we made that up. We saw it on, I saw people doing infomercials. I'd call a phone number, and on the phone, the sales guy would do what they called bumps. He'd offer you free, rush shipping for an extra $10. He'd offer you the digital version for an extra $20 or whatever, and they called them bumps. And so I was like, I wonder if we could add that to our order form. So we started testing like these last minute offers and throwing them in the order form. We tried putting them above the credit card form, below the credit. Anyway, figured out, and that became, I started calling it order form bump. But we called them sales processes back then. I don't know who was the first person to call it sales funnel, but it was, a decade of us geeking out on all those things and variations and trying this version and that version in different ways, and it was a really creative, fun time where every time we found something new, there was probably a dozen of us, and we'd share notes and like, oh, check out what I did over here, and then they'd copy me, and then I'd copy them, and we'd copy each other back and forth. And we were doing, say on average, we were doing a product launch every 90 days. So every 90 days we had a new version we were iterating on and iterating and testing for a decade. So it was like a lot of real-time testing. And so I was like, I'd launch once a quarter, and each of them were launching once a quarter. So we had a chance where we were launching different versions of funnels every week or two. There's new iterations coming out, and all this stuff was being discovered during that window of time. It was really fun.
Nice. I notice a lot when you talk, you name people that others may not have ever heard of to tell a story about what they accomplished and how they helped you. It's rare that I hear that. Why do you do that?
Yeah, partially because I hope that people do that with me. It drives me crazy when people don't give credit. I've seen it all the time. I mean, I've been this long enough. I've seen 1,000 people take my ideas and mark them off as their own, which I think is super disrespectful. And I've always just, even if people don't know who the person is, I'm like, this is where I learned it from. And I feel like a lot of people are afraid that if they tell where they learned something from, it's going to hurt their significance. And I think the opposite is true. Like, showing that you are well studied and that you did the work and learned from people shows that, like, you're a good student. And it also, if your goal is to get people to be your students, and if you're a student, like, if you're like, oh, I invented all this stuff top of my head, like, I don't know, I don't want to hire the mentor who tried to invent everything. I want to hire the mentor who did what I'm doing, like, went on the journey and studied and found the things and brought them back to me in a way that that I could learn from. So, and I've always, a lot of people look at themselves as an author or a coach or whatever, but I look at myself as a curator. I feel like I have access to more things and more ideas than most people do. And Rich Sheffrin actually said this once. He said that, he's like, our job is to think for a lot of people. And so he's like, I go out there, I study, I read, I learn, I test, I think, and I'm thinking for other people because they're not going to do that work, and I got to bring back, like, the gold nugget for them. And that's what we do. That's why we get paid so well, because we're thinking for other people.
A lot of times what we do is we're just, like, so used to, like, doing things. You could drive a car and have this conversation, no problem. But when you start adding something new, and I think it's a great, like, analogy with business, is we just get to the point where we stop doing things that we know need to happen. A lot of people, when they're turning to final, they get slow, start reaching for the runway, pull back, stall with a roll, and that's how they're rolling over and falling to the ground. So they get task saturated, talking on the radios, turning, looking, they're slow, their power's out, they're not scanning, and that's what happens. So here's slow flight, and you can take the controls for a little bit. So that's slow flight. If you pull the nose back, you're gonna hear this woman again. But there's 75 knots. Go ahead and, like, turn right.
Airspeed.
You see how much turn has to happen for us to do that? Okay, I'm gonna take the controls because we might actually stall in a turn like that. So okay, so what I want to show you is, like, the control manipulation that you're doing when we're fast. Like, watch this. I can move the controls all the way forward and back, and we don't even really move. Same thing like this. Like, we're not even rolling. So this is all the lift that happens over the wings, like when we're fast. If I did that when we were going fast, we would roll upside down. Or we would pitch way nose down. Okay, I want to ask you about a place called the Rubber Room. So tell me about that place, and tell me about, like, maybe what that time in your life you feel like did for you as a business owner and entrepreneur in the future.
First off, I'm impressed you even know the name of that. I haven't heard that name in a decade or two. The Rubber Room was my wrestling room growing up. So my wrestling room was underneath the basketball court, or underneath the basketball gym, and it was this weird room. It was all rubber floors and wrestling mats, and it was super hot down there. The heater system of the entire school is down there, so you'd crank up, get so hot, which was nice for cutting weight. And that was my home. I lived there for, 6 hours a day, every day for my entire high school career, and that's where I learned everything. I learned how to wrestle, but the journey of wrestling, man, is all about, like, setting goals. And when I started wrestling, I wanted to be a state champ, and that's where I learned how to do that, how to pick a goal, pursue it with everything, your heart, your soul, your everything. And that's where I became who I am. Honestly, like, everything I've done since then has been easy. Dan Gable, who's, the Michael Jordan of wrestling, he has a quote that says, once you've wrestled, everything else in life is easy. And it's true. Like, I lived for 4 or 5 years in that room and learned all the life lessons, and everything I've done since then has been simple compared to that.
So what do you recommend for the person that's listening right now that wants to build a big business, wants to do something, wants to become successful like you, and maybe they haven't wrestled or something like that, but there's something that they do. Like, how can they take that and do what you've done, where wrestling was your background, that you feel like you were able to carry forward, and they have something that they can reach back to in their life? Like, what does that look like?
I think the biggest thing I learned from wrestling was I had to go out there every single day myself, walk out there in a singlet, shake someone's hand and wrestle.
Oh, that is so gross.
And I lost a lot. And I think what most people who struggle as an entrepreneur and a business owner, the reason why they struggle is that they've never lost, or they forgot about losing. And so they have so much fear tied up in, like, what if I try this thing and it fails? And they think in their head, like, if it fails, then I'm a failure. And what sports taught me, what wrestling taught me, was not that if I fail, I'm a failure. It's like, if I fail, I got to look at why I failed. Like, what were the reasons? Oh, I lost because I was out of position here. I lost because I'm not in good enough shape. Because, whatever the things are. And we figured out, like, what are the pieces that, the reasons why I lost. And then we went back to the drawing board.
Now, what is so hard about that?
And start practicing and drilling and training to, like, tighten up and close those gaps. And then go back to the next match and you get better and you get better. And business is the same way. Like, when you fail, it's not that you're a failure. It's like, oh, the offer failed, the idea didn't work, the market didn't work, the ads were too expensive. Like, and I think that as soon as you can go back to your past and find something where you failed in the past and you were okay with it, and it wasn't like life-threatening, that will unlock what you need to be an entrepreneur. Because I would say of the hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs that I've coached, the ones who had never broken through and made the success they want is because they have so much fear that if they fail, then the dream that they have of being successful will die with them, that they don't even try. And that's the biggest tragedy. And so I think it's learning that, like, you are going to fail. I failed more. I guarantee I have more failed funnels than every funnel of all of our inner circle members combined. Like, that's the level of how often I failed. But because that's how I learned. Same thing in wrestling. I was never the wrestler who was, like, undefeated his whole career. Like, I lost all the time. Then we'd go back, watch film, figure out what adjustments we need to make, and then came back and then beat the same guys I lost to earlier. And same thing in business. We launched a funnel. We launched a funnel 2 weeks ago that didn't do well. But we learned why, and we came back and we shifted the offer, changed the sequence, and now we're rolling out the second test, and it'll do better than the last one, and we'll probably do that 2 or 3 more times. But even at this point where I've been doing this 20 plus years, like, every funnel's not flawless. Every funnel doesn't work. We still have all sorts of failures with, the way to make those adjustments again and again.
Okay, I've noticed recently that you started wrestling again. So you went and did tournaments and things like that. Why do you feel like you want to do that or need to do that? You did that in your past. You became successful, spent a lot of time in business, and now it looks like you're going back to where you started. Like, tell me about that. Have you thought about it, and why are you doing it?
Yeah, I think a lot of reasons. Number one is, like, it was my life. It was my identity. For a decade and a half of my life, that's all I thought about. That's all I did. And then when I stopped, it was just over. And, like, I missed that part of me. It's the part of me, like, when I started wrestling again, like, I felt alive again for the first time. It was like the same way you feel flying. Like this is your passion. Like, you get up there and you're like, like, you feel alive. Like, part of it was like, I've got kids who are in high school who are wrestling now, and one of my sons loves wrestling, and so it became a thing that me and him started doing together as well. Like, I started coaching him and being in his things. Then actually last year came to my tournament that I was doing, and it was just fun for him to, I think fun for him to see it too. Like, and he can make fun of me and tease me, but it's like a thing we can do together now. And then also I think it's just the nostalgia of it. It's like the reason why everyone's favorite music is usually the era that they listened to in high school. Like, for me, it's the 90s. I still listen to the 90s every day.
Yo, man, let's get out of here. Word to your mother.
The nostalgia of it, that I don't know, putting the shoes on, and I don't know, there's just something to that just makes me happy. Like, I miss it. Like, I could be having a horrible day, and some of my friends come over and we'll wrestle, and like the release of, like, all the stress and anxiety, just be like, this brings me back to that excitement again. So I think for most people, like, you got to find the thing you loved as a kid, because that's probably the most true version of yourself before you had all of the limitations of the world on you. And I've had a lot of people since I started wrestling who told me that, like, I used to love tennis when I was a kid, and, like, I watched you, now I'm playing tennis again, and, like, it lights me up, or like, I was a karate guy, and I'm going to go do another tournament. And I think when you guys start doing that, you realize the things you did as a kid were your truest, like, most true version of yourself, and by doing them again, man, it just lights you up at a different level. So that's why I'm doing it, and it's been so much fun. I can't even tell you.
I feel the same way about my farm. So, like, I bought this farm and started growing, and I'm excited today because we're selling 200 gallons of blueberries. We'll make $2,000. Where if I look at my merchant account today, we'll make way more than $2,000.
Excited about that.
Yeah, it's just, I look back, and that's how I used to be with, like, I'd buy candy in bulk and break it up and sell it out of a pencil box in middle school before school started. I would trade and sell baseball cards when I was like 13 at a baseball card show when everybody else was like 50 years old at the mall. You know, stuff like that where I was just like trading, putting $1 in and getting $2 out. And it's as simple as, I don't care if I make $50. Like if I go sell and talk to somebody and have belly-to-belly sale and I can upsell them a cheese or a beef, like it's magical. And I look back and there's so much joy that I had as a kid doing things like that, playing soccer, flying, all these kind of things. Because like flying was not my kid thing. It was my work thing for 20 years. So I do enjoy this and love it, and I get to do some amazing things. Really like going back and working with my hands and getting dirty and just feeling like accomplished again as opposed to like making money on a computer. It's been interesting. I've watched people cycle like this, and it makes me wonder. There's a lot of usually like affluent, successful people that are going back and doing something where people are like, dude, I've been doing this for 20 years. This has been my job my whole life, farming, and now you're coming in with all your money and stuff. And get out of here. But it's like really found, I think it's finding joy. Like joy and fulfillment was really cool. So I saw it in you, and I've seen it in a lot of other people. One of my partners, he went back and found music again, and he's been playing music and loving it. And just stuff like that. It's like just going back to being like a kid, like you said, innocent, fun, joy, where you don't have any other stress or problems. Here we go. I'm going to try to get some speed, and I'm going to show you what a couple G's feels like. So a little bit like a roller coaster at Six Flags, maybe. I won't get too crazy. We're not going to like do a loop. But normally we do a loop. We do like 220. I drop the nose, get 220 knots. And if we were going to do a loop, we'd pull about 4.5 G's on the front. It would get light at the top, and then we'd have 4.5 G's at the bottom. But we need to get up to like 220, and it would be like this. So you feel that?
Oh, yeah.
You feel that? So this is like just, it's like a roller coaster, right, in the beginning. A couple times at force of gravity. And then this is the opposite.
Yeah.
You feel okay? So that's the opposite, and that's like a little bit of light G, like 0 G. So you would see like up, on a space station or something like that where you don't have gravity, but you'd be floating like that. All right, there we go. So now I can call approach and can get back. Okay, a few years ago, you were considering selling ClickFunnels. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, we'd gotten to the point where, I don't know, you set goals, like first goals, I want to make $1 million, you make $1 million. Cool, I want to make 10 million, you make 10. And it's like, I want to make 100 million, and then we got to 100 million, and then we're like, what's next? Like, this goal's $1 billion? I'm like, do I really want to go on that journey? It seems so far, and so, I don't know. And so that was the question, is like, the goal seems so far away. Is it worth, the same thing happened wrestling. Like, when I got into college wrestling, the next level was the Olympics, and I was like, oh, the gap between being a really good college wrestler and being an Olympian is so wide that I decided to not take that journey. First time I was wrestling, like, I was training, competing, and trying to be something, and it mattered. Now it's just like, I just want to have fun. Like, my son was teasing me because I took third in the national tournament. He's like, oh, Dad, you lost. I'm like, I don't care if I lost all these matches. Like, that's not, I'm not competitive at this point for this. I just want to do it again. Like, I just want to get out there and scrap with some guys and roll around and beat each other up and get a black eye. And like I just miss that part so much, And I think the same thing as a business. Like, do we really want to take that journey? To make that decision, we had to figure, well, if we were to sell, what would that look like? And so we kind of started down that path. We went down the path for a year and a half, 2 years to go through, the valuations and the people. And anyway, when all was said and done, we finally got an offer that was an offer that Russell 10 years ago, if you would have told me, hey, in the future, someone's going to offer you this amount of money for your company. Young Russell would have kicked my butt for saying no, but we got a point where it was like, we had an offer. It wasn't as much as we wanted it to be. And we're like, do we do it? Do we not do it? And the reality is I think, taking those 2 years of trying to figure out how to sell it, we took our eye off the ball a little bit. We weren't growing. It was kind of stagnant, kind of losing speed. And we knew that to get back where we needed to, we'd have to rebuild the platform. We just knew how much work would go into doing another, to get it back to where we needed to be. And I think the decision for us was basically if we sell it the way it is right now, it's probably going to, over time, will just kind of dwindle. And the legacy we tried to build would probably go away. Versus if we spend 2 or 3 years and rebuild the platform, relaunch it, get to a certain point that it would be leading on an upward trajectory, and they would last a lot longer. And so that's what we decided to do. Almost like it's playing, looking at right now, as long as I can see the horizon, I'm good. That's where ClickFunnels was running at. I see the horizon, we're profitable, let's go. But then all these other gears, this is what the big companies want, to be able to see everything and understand it at a really deep level, so they can just feel at the top of the funnel. So
then they're beating you down for every time you say, I don't know what this is, I don't know, we don't have this. It's like, oh, well, that's just going to lower the valuation more and more.
Every time they ask them, we don't know, they're like, oh.
And you're just like, they're going to sell us 10 million.
I think it was interesting is actually, I was in Fiji with Tony Robbins and asked him the question, and his thing was dude, this is you. You line up when you talk about this. If you got rid of it, what would you do next? And I was like, I have no idea. He said, don't don't sell something unless you have something you're more excited about that you're jumping into. Otherwise, you're just going to be miserable. Most of the people I know who sold businesses have miserable. They see what happened to their baby they grew up, and they take a different direction, things like that, and it destroys them. It's like a death when they actually sell their business. And that was, I think, for me, the driving voice in the back of my head is I don't have the next thing that I'm more passionate than this about, so let's just double down and focus on this.
So are you going to tell me how much you got offered for it?
I could. I mean, it's interesting. When we first started the negotiations, the process is weird because you create something, you put it out there, and we had 100 people came back, and the first people before they go deep into the stuff, and so the first offers were coming in close to $1 billion, which is oh my gosh.
Say that again.
Close to $1 billion.
Okay, if you missed it, that's a billion, close to $1 billion.
Nice.
But then they start getting, goes from 100 people down to 40, down to 30, down to 10, and then 10 start getting deeper, and then their whole job is venture capitalists or whatever is to give you the least amount of money possible, and they're way smarter than us, just so you know, in this stuff. So first they were super nice and and then you get closer and closer, and then the offer we got was closer to 400 million would have been the actual what we would have walked away with, which is insane. But also in our head we were worth $1 billion because that's what we had thought. I'm this is less than half of what we thought we were worth, and we knew now also going through the process what were the triggers. These are 3 metrics that lowered our valuation. They cut our valuation in half because these 3 things we didn't know or didn't do or weren't doing correctly. And so we knew those things and was gosh dang it, if they buy it, we have to stay on for 3 years anyway. Now they will be my boss to execute on these 3 things. I'm very aware of what they are now, but now I got to do it with somebody else watching over my shoulder. And I was what if we just fixed the things and got them in place and got the valuation we were worthy of? And so I think that's a big part of it. We knew what we'd have to do, and we have the ability now to make those changes without somebody yelling at me or somebody. I don't know. I've never had a boss. I'm not sure what that's like, but it sounds horrible.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, I think I'm a pretty nice boss, but I can't imagine dudes who gave you a $400 million check being nice bosses. They're we need our money back. Oh crap.
Yeah, I've had bosses, in fact, in the military where I couldn't say no.
Do it! Just do it!
So it's this is an order. You go do it. I don't care if you don't like it. It's pretty rough. And I did that for a long time in my life.
Everyone I know who sold a business and they stay on for 3 years or whatever the thing is afterwards, all of them end up leaving early, and they all hated it. And they all you get way less money because I think part of it's part of their strategy. We'll give you this, and then they push you really hard till you quit, and then they give you half of that or a tenth of that or whatever it is. I was just sounds horrible. Our whole goal is to let entrepreneurs bootstrap their businesses, and the opposite of that by giving up control. And it was crazy now, of all of our competitors, we're the only ones who still have not taken on any money. So we're the only ones that still control our destiny. For the positive or the negative, we'll find out.
All right, so we're getting ready to land the plane. So I'll set us up for landing. Effectively, our speed, somewhere around 85 knots is what we'll hold coming down. So what you want to do is just hold the nose up like that. And as we get slower, we're going to lose lift. So you got to pull back to maintain the same thing. You're not pitching up. If you do that, we'll balloon a little bit. That's not really a huge issue. We can recover from it. If it's really bad, I'll just go around. We'll go back around. I'll kind of talk you through it, but we'll get you to land the plane. Do you guys think that Russell can land this plane by himself? Let's just say, if something happens and we crash and burn and die, there's probably something that you've never told anyone on an interview before that you'd be willing to share right now on this interview just in case that happens. So what's something that nobody knows about that you've never said on an interview that you should say before you try to attempt to
Or certain death, or
certain death, but potential very small potential of death. So what is something that you've never shared before with an audience, your audience, anybody that you can share right now for me?
First off, I love my kids and my wife. I love you guys if I die. My last minute. I would say the biggest thing is to want to be successful is going back in history and watching what people have been doing for a long time. Everything that we're innovating on right now is coming from stuff that I'm stealing from early 1900s. There's been patterns that have been working forever, and nowadays most people are not using actual strategy. They're just copying and modeling each other as opposed to finding out what was working pre-internet, pre-everything. And I think that where my study is, I'm studying old school marketers, Dan Kennedy, Charles Austin Bates, who's been dead for 100 years. Those are the people who have the best copy, best strategy, best marketing. And understanding those things is where I feel the innovation is actually coming from nowadays. Even our company, we spent the last week looking at the campaigns we ran 18 years ago and remodeling those now for ClickFunnels because nobody's doing them. But they were things that were working pre-Facebook, pre-everything, and it's as people see him roll them out, they're like, man, that's so innovative, Russell. It's like, no, it's just stuff we did 15 years ago, else forgot about. We're bringing it back. And so,
all right, fly and talk.
Yeah, I'm flying and talking now.
All right, we're on final. Y'all numbers off, gears down, flaps are landing, gear is checked down. 3 green lights, we're looking good. So just keep the nose of the numbers. Just push the nose down with the numbers. I'll control the power for us. The power will control our altitude. Our nose attitude should stay the same. So just push down a little bit. You want to keep the nose at the numbers. So the numbers will, you see that as those numbers? 1, 0, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So come a little bit left. There you go. So you control the plane. So you got to kind of manhandle it to put it where you want. Don't let it fly you, you fly it. So there you go. Nose of the numbers. You feel that? Like we got a little bump it. So just keep pushing the nose down. It should look the same. So you put them right in the middle of that glare shield. Keep it there. See that? How that, like, the pitch is looking different, but the view is staying the same. 1, 0, right? So keep the nose down, keep the nose down, keep the nose down. And when those numbers disappear, start leveling a bit, right there. Level. Okay, and we'll pull the power out. Now start pulling back. Pull the nose back. The nose back. More.
Airspeed.
You did it. You did it. Perfect. My hands were actually up that time. So you'll see it on the video. You landed that plane by yourself.
Oh man,
I control the power.
Now what's happening? Am I gonna wreck us?
Yeah, just hold it right there. This is good. Flaps are coming up. If anybody wants to find out about you, Russell Brunson, ClickFunnels, anything that you guys are doing, where should they go and how can they find out more?
I just recently set up russellbrunson.com. There's links to all of our businesses. People are like, you do so much stuff. What's every? So russellbrunson.com. You can find, from there you can find ClickFunnels. You can find our supplement companies. You can find our info product companies, our newsletters, our all the companies I own. Everything's there, and you can kind of go down the rabbit hole and find out what you're interested to learn about me.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the next one.